Inspired leader. I want to share another kind of personal story or experience, which I think is kind of where these newsletters are going to start to go, to be honest. Um, I wanted to share with you how I spent my weekend, which might seem kind of irrelevant to you, but the message I have for you is to carve out a weekend to be with yourself, to be alone, to step away from your family commitments, work commitments, social commitments, and book yourself on a solo retreat, if you want to call it that, or just a solo weekend, and create that space to be with yourself. This is something I, 4 or 5 years ago, the thought of it would actually terrify me. Like it would feel so uncomfortable and scary to think about being alone. It's like I didn't know how to do that. And I know when I was working with my hypnotherapist, we worked on fears that I had of being alone, like being an old woman who's alone and having nobody and feeling like I didn't know how to be just with myself. And so worked on those fears with her in that therapeutic context. And then I decided to develop a practice of being by myself and working through that fear by practicing it, being in that experience of being alone so that I could build my capacity for that experience and, maybe debunk some of those fears or narratives that I'd been creating. So over the past 4 or 5 years, I've worked really intentionally on that and um, have booked myself on solo retreats to actually kind of work on work stuff by myself. And now I'm fortunate to have access to another place where I can be there by myself without my family, without friends. And yeah, I would be nervous about that. And here's where I'm at now, like 4 or 5 years later. It's like, oh, I crave that experience of being by myself, with myself. And this past weekend, I was even more intentional about it. Like I didn't turn on the TV. I did a little bit of news scrolling on my iPad and a little bit of social media scrolling, but I mostly did things that were more solitary, less like information input, and just being with myself. And it was at times uncomfortable. I had a lot of emotional experiences over the 2 days, a lot of grief that I'm still processing that I haven't told you about. So it was an opportunity to really be in that experience of grief and to also be in experiences of joy and gratitude and quiet. And what I notice when I create that space to be with myself is how much clarity starts to emerge. It's like the subconscious thoughts suddenly have an opportunity to surface and be like, hey, here we are. Here's what we've been working on in the background here. And you're finally quiet enough to listen, to have space to listen to your inner knowing, your inner clarity. And as I kind of re-enter and yesterday came back into family life, I was just so aware of how other people's energy impacts me and how just the way I plan my day or think about the day when other people are there, it's different. And we're tuned into what other people need from us. So I think we all need time to be with ourselves. And if you can't do a whole weekend, maybe you create a practice of like a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon and just carve out time to be with yourself and notice how that feels. Notice what comes up when you're in that space and that relationship with yourself, and you're with your emotions and your thoughts. And tell me how it goes. Tell me what you learned. Tell me how it feels. I'm so curious about this as I've now kind of witnessed this evolution from like great resistance to being alone to now like great delight and craving of time to be with myself. So I would love to hear about your experience with this, and maybe this is something you already do. Tell me about that as well. So I hope this serves you. Basically, like, how can you be with yourself more often? How can you create the time to be alone and cultivate that relationship with you? I can't wait to hear about your experience with this. We'll see you next week.